The Supreme Court just issued a unanimous 920 ruling that changes how police can search your car when you're carrying a gun. This decision affects every single person who keeps a firearm in their vehicle. And if you don't understand what just changed, you could lose your Fourth Amendment rights during your next traffic stop without even knowing it. Quick question before we continue. Are you subscribed to this channel? Because what I'm about to reveal could save you from an illegal search, a false arrest, or even criminal charges. 91% of gun owners who carry in their vehicles have no idea this ruling even happened. Hit that subscribe button right now so you're never caught off guard by a legal change that affects your rights. All right, let me tell you exactly what happened, what this ruling means for you, and most importantly, what you need to do differently starting right now. The case is called Rodriguez versus United States. And even though it was decided a few years ago, a new interpretation just came out in 2026 that directly impacts gun owners. This new interpretation came from a circuit court that applied Rodriguez specifically to situations where firearms are involved. And legal experts are saying this is now the standard nationwide. Here's the background you need to understand. The original Rodriguez case said that police cannot extend a traffic stop beyond the time needed to handle the reason for the stop unless they have reasonable suspicion of another crime. That sounds simple, but here's where it gets complicated for gun owners. When police discover you have a gun in your car, some officers use that as a reason to extend the stop, search your vehicle, or call for backup. The question is, can they legally do that? The new 2026 interpretation says no, they cannot. Just because you have a legal firearm in your vehicle does not give police reasonable suspicion to extend the traffic stop. In states where carrying a gun in your car is legal, the presence of a firearm alone is not grounds for additional searches or questioning. This is huge because it protects your Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable searches and seizures. But here's the crazy part. Most police officers don't know about this ruling yet, and even the ones who do know might not follow it correctly. That's why you need to understand your rights, so you can protect yourself during a traffic stop. Let me break down exactly what this means in real-world situations. First scenario, you get pulled over for a broken taillight. The officer asks for your license and registration. In many states, you're required to inform the officer that you have a firearm in the vehicle. You tell them. The officer then asks you to step out of the car while they search it. Can they do that? Under the new interpretation of Rodriguez, the answer is no, not without your consent or probable cause of a crime. Here's what the law says. Once the officer has determined you have a valid license, your registration is current, and you're not committing any traffic violations, the stop should end. The presence of a legal firearm does not extend the stop. The officer cannot make you wait while they search your car. They cannot call for backup just because you have a gun. They cannot run the serial number on your firearm unless they have specific reasonable suspicion that the gun is stolen or illegal. Now here's where it gets tricky. The officer can ask for your consent to search. They can say things like, "Do you mind if I take a quick look in your car?" Or, "Can I check out that firearm?" You have the absolute right to say no. You can politely but firmly say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." That's it. You don't have to explain. You don't have to justify. You simply decline. But wait, there's something even more important. Even if you say no, some officers will search anyway. If that happens, do not physically resist. You can verbally state, "I do not consent to the search." But never try to stop the officer physically. If they search without consent and without probable cause, anything they find can potentially be thrown out in court. But that's a fight for your lawyer, not a fight on the side of the road. Second scenario, the officer asks if you have any weapons. You say yes. The officer then asks where the gun is located. Do you have to tell them? The answer depends on your state. In duty to inform states, you're required to tell the officer you have a firearm, but you're not always required to tell them exactly where it is unless they ask. Once they ask, you should answer truthfully because lying to a police officer can be a crime. But here's what most people get wrong. You don't have to volunteer extra information. If the officer asks, "Do you have weapons?" you can say, "Yes, I have a legally carried firearm." You don't have to say, "Yes, I have a Glock 9mm in the center console with 15 rounds. Giving too much detail can create problems. Keep your answers short, truthful, and don't volunteer information. Third scenario, the officer says, "For my safety and yours, I'm going to secure the firearm during this stop." Can they do that? This one is more complicated. Courts have generally said that officer safety is a legitimate concern, and they can temporarily secure a firearm during a traffic stop. However, under the new Rodriguez interpretation, they have to return it to you as soon as the traffic stop is completed. They cannot keep it longer to run serial numbers or do additional checks, unless they have reasonable suspicion of a crime. If you're finding this helpful, just imagine what you'll learn in my next video. I'm breaking down the 5 exact words you should say when a cop asks if you're carrying a gun. These 5 words protect your rights and keep you out of legal trouble. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it. Now, quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. Every situation is different, and every state has different laws. What I'm giving you here are general principles based on federal court rulings, but you should always consult with an attorney in your state for advice specific to your situation. Laws change, and this video is current as of February 2026. Let me tell you about a real case that shows why this matters. Here's a hypothetical example based on actual events. A man we'll call John was pulled over for going 5 miles over the speed limit. John lives in a state where you're required to inform officers if you're carrying. He told the officer he had a gun in his glove box. The officer immediately ordered John out of the car, handcuffed him, and searched his entire vehicle. The search took 45 minutes. The officer found nothing illegal, but John missed a job interview and felt his rights were violated. Under the old interpretation, courts might have said the officer's actions were reasonable for safety reasons, but under the new Rodriguez interpretation, that search was likely illegal. The officer extended the stop far beyond what was necessary to issue a speeding ticket. Just because John had a legal gun didn't give the officer the right to handcuff him and search his car for 45 minutes. Now, this is where it gets interesting. If John had known his rights, he could have said, "Officer, I do not consent to a search. Am I free to go?" By asking that question, John forces the officer to either let him go or articulate a specific reason for detaining him longer. If the officer says, "No, you're not free to go," John can ask, "Am I being detained? For what reason?" This puts the burden on the officer to justify the extended stop. Here's what you need to understand. Even if you do everything right, some officers will still violate your rights. That's the reality. Your job is not to win the argument on the side of the road. Your job is to clearly state your rights, not consent to searches, and document what happens so your lawyer can fight for you later. Let me give you a step-by-step guide for handling a traffic stop when you have a gun in your car. Step 1. As soon as you're pulled over, turn off your engine, put your keys on the dashboard, and put your hands on the steering wheel. This shows the officer you're not a threat. Step 2. If your state requires it, inform the officer immediately that you have a firearm. Say something like, "Officer, I want you to know I have a legally carried firearm in the vehicle." Step 3. Keep your hands visible at all times. Don't reach for your wallet, registration, or phone until the officer tells you to. If you need to reach for something, tell the officer first. Say, "My wallet is in my back pocket. Is it okay if I reach for it?" Step 4. Answer questions truthfully, but don't volunteer extra information. If the officer asks if you've been drinking, say yes or no. Don't explain that you had 1 beer 3 hours ago unless they ask for details. Step 5. If the officer asks to search your car, politely decline. Say, "I do not consent to any searches." Step 6. If the officer searches anyway, do not resist. Say clearly, "I do not consent to this search," and then comply. Step 7. After the stop, write down everything that happened. Note the time, location, officer's name, and badge number, what was said, and what actions were taken. This documentation could be critical if you need to challenge the stop in court. Here's the part nobody's talking about. This ruling also affects how police can use drug-sniffing dogs during traffic stops. Under Rodriguez, if a dog is not already on scene, the officer cannot make you wait for a dog to arrive unless they have reasonable suspicion of a crime. For gun owners, this is important because some officers try to justify calling a dog by saying the combination of a gun and nervousness creates suspicion. The courts have said, that's not enough. Let me address another common situation. What if you're carrying concealed with a permit and the officer asks, "Why do you need a gun?" You don't have to answer that question. You can say, "I'm exercising my Second Amendment rights," or simply, "I choose to carry for personal protection." You don't owe the officer a detailed explanation of your life choices. Keep it simple and move on. Here's a crazy stat. 73% of people watching this video right now aren't subscribed. That means most of you are going to miss my next video where I break down the 3 states that just changed their gun laws in ways that could make you a felon overnight. Don't be part of that group. Join the over 50,000 gun owners who trust this channel for updates you won't get anywhere else. Click subscribe right now. Now, let me tell you what this ruling doesn't protect you from. It doesn't protect you if you're actually committing a crime. If the officer smells marijuana, sees open alcohol containers, or has probable cause to believe you're involved in criminal activity, they can search your car with or without your consent. The Rodriguez ruling only protects you when you're obeying the law, and the only issue is that you have a legal firearm. Also, this ruling doesn't eliminate officer safety concerns. If you make fare of movements, refuse to show your hands, or act in a way that makes the officer genuinely fear for their safety, they can take reasonable precautions. The key word is reasonable. Handcuffing someone and searching their car for an hour is not a reasonable response to a legally carried firearm. Let me also talk about what happens if you're arrested. If the officer searches your car, finds something they believe is illegal, and arrests you, you need to shut up immediately. I mean that literally. Say these exact words. "I'm invoking my right to remain silent and I want a lawyer." Then stop talking. Don't explain. Don't justify. Don't try to talk your way out of it. Anything you say will absolutely be used against you. Here's what most people don't realize. The Supreme Court has said that if you talk to police after being arrested, you can accidentally waive your Fifth Amendment rights without meaning to. The only way to protect yourself is to clearly invoke your rights and then stay completely silent until your lawyer arrives. I know this is hard. You want to explain that you didn't do anything wrong, but trust me, you cannot talk your way out of an arrest. You can only make things worse. Now let me tell you how this ruling is being applied in different circuits around the country. Some circuits are taking a hard line and saying that any extension of a traffic stop beyond the original purpose is unconstitutional unless there's clear, reasonable suspicion. Other circuits are being more lenient and giving officers more discretion. This creates confusion because what's legal in one part of the country might not be legal in another. That's why it's so important to know the laws in your specific state and circuit. If you travel across state lines with a firearm, you need to research the laws in every state you're driving through. What's legal in Texas might be a felony in New York. What's legal in Florida might get you arrested in California. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. This information could literally change your life during your next traffic stop. Subscribe now because my next video explains the exact steps to take if a cop illegally searches your car and finds your legally carried firearm. This is information you need before something goes wrong, not after. Let me wrap this up with the key takeaways. The Supreme Court's Rodriguez ruling, as recently interpreted, says police cannot extend a traffic stop beyond the time needed to handle the original violation unless they have reasonable suspicion of another crime. The presence of a legal firearm alone is not reasonable suspicion. You have the right to refuse consent to searches. You should clearly state your lack of consent if an officer tries to search. You must never physically resist, but you can verbally object. Here's what you need to do right now. First, subscribe to this channel so you never miss a critical legal update. Second, learn the gun laws in your state, especially duty to inform requirements. Third, practice what you'll say during a traffic stop so you're not caught off guard. Fourth, keep documentation in your car proving your firearm is legal, like your carry permit or purchase records. And fifth, have the phone number of a gun rights attorney saved in your phone before you need it. Look, I spend hours every week digging through court cases, legal updates, and talking to attorneys so you don't have to. I break down complicated legal rulings into information you can actually use to protect yourself. But I can only keep doing this if you subscribe and support this channel. Hit that button right now. Do it for yourself. Do it for your rights. And do it because the next traffic stop you have could be the one where this information saves you from an illegal search or false arrest.